All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Real Talk, Michigan Edition. Jeff here. Dan, how are you, sir?
Good, buddy. Glad to be back.
Good. Glad to have you back. We took a little bit of a short week hiatus last week. It just schedules didn't match up, but we're here to give
Holiday.
a holiday. We're here to give a double episode though. We'll go into a couple of different games here. One good, one bad, but it is what it is. Let's go ahead and start off with where we left off. So Michigan's coming into the Rutgers game. They were favored, I believe, by 10 or so points. Joe Milton comes in and doesn't impress. Starts 5 of 12 for 89 yards, and it just, they go behind. I believe it was 17-0, 14-0, 7-0.
It was 17-0.
It was 17-0. So they go behind 17-0, and Cade comes in. He obviously came in a few weeks back as well, and this time he comes in and it's to stay, and he goes 27 of 36, 260, and 4 touchdowns in a come from behind overtime victory, which took 3 overtimes, right?
Yes, it did.
Three overtimes, yeah. I mean, lots to break down here. Obviously, Rutgers is not the Rutgers of old, but Michigan's not the Michigan of old either. I mean, this is they winning this game, they moved to 2-3, right? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that. Yeah,
they were
they
2. Yep, 2-3.
Yeah. So, gosh, I mean, let me start here. I was happy to see this was the first game that Michigan solidified one running back. We're gonna have a quote unquote bell cow, and we're gonna hand it off, and we're gonna give one guy 20 plus carries. And it was the guy that I've been calling for all year, Hassan Haskins. And Cornelius Johnson, who I've peeped on this pod a couple of times, I thought he needed to get more targets and be more involved in the passing game. He has a huge game, 5 of 105 for 2 scores. But storyline of the game, obviously, is Joe Milton finally getting benched, like for good. And Cade comes in and dominates. What was your initial reaction? We're not even going to pretending Penn State didn't happen at this point.
Okay.
What's your feelings? First off, let's just go back to the second half when Cade has tied it up, and now they're going back and forth. What is your initial feelings of this game at that point?
It gave me anxiety because we're playing a back and forth with Rutgers, but it was nice to see that finally our offense was clicking, and I was taking my grain of salt with it because it is Rutgers, and you're right, not the Rutgers of old, but you obviously you should win this game. If you're U of M, this should be not even close. But seeing the offense clicking, Cade, I have to say, is very decisive with his throws. That's why he doesn't get sacked as much, and that's why his throws are most of the time on target and timed correctly. Milton, for some reason, it seems like after the Minnesota game, holds on to the ball for really long and gets sacked a lot. And then when he steps up into the pocket, he's stepping up too late, and it's not there anymore. So second half, I was on the edge of my seat because, again, it's kind of felt like the 2010 game against Illinois when they had Nate Shieldhaas and Denard Robinson and just firing touchdowns every time they touched the ball. But W in this case was a W. So it took a missed field goal in overtime or something like that to really keep the momentum up. But it was good. It was finally nice to see it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I agree. I thought Cade's pocket presence and what he was able to bring, it was just like, it was night and day difference. And I forget the word you used, but once Cade came in, then it seemed like literally everything started clicking.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the run game all of a sudden looked dominant. And I mean, it was one of those things. And again, in the back of my head, I'm like, well, this is Rutgers. I mean, this is at least the practice to get this moving, and it seemed promising. A couple of people that we've talked about in the pod over the last couple of weeks, Nick Eubanks actually has a solid game, 5 of 43 and a touchdown. Eric All, who we were kind of critical of, to be fair, and it's just been deserving. He actually had a
Mm-hmm.
solid game. He had 4 catches for 27. Um, the one cool thing about Cade McNamara is he wasn't in bed with any target. He was throwing it to anyone and anyone that was open. Um, obviously coming in and like I think it was the second throw of the game, he hits Cornelius Johnson for a very deep pass, 50-ish yarder, I think,
Yep.
46 yarder, whatever it was. But yeah, I mean, my overall perspective leaving this game is just like Michigan has a lot of work to do because they're having a back and forth with Rutgers. But at the same token, I think they found their quarterback.
I think so. And going into the half, it's 17-7. Cade, puts the Cornelius Johnson pass on the board. And then right out of the gate, they get Giles Jackson to take one of the house on the kickoff.
Yeah.
So that was a huge game changer right there. So the team came to life in a sense with Cade. And again, it's Rutgers. I'm not pretending I'm not thinking about the Penn State game yet. I'm just hoping that this translates to the next week and they can build off this and hopefully get some confidence. But their defense, which we can touch on here in a second, their defense is still absolutely, I say it a lot, atrocious. They're just getting gashed in the run game. In this game, they only gave up 105 on the ground.
On 40 carries.
On 40 carries, but it seemed like when it was on crucial plays, it would go right up the gut. It's just what it felt like. And then their secondary, I mean, they were getting torched, man. Like 381 in the air, and it seemed just like every third or fourth pass, they're getting behind the corners. And we've been putting Don Brown on the hot seat all season. After the Minnesota game, he's put a laundry list of players in the NFL that've been really solid for U of M. So it's just not working out in 2020.
Yeah, I mean, to put things in perspective, you were saying how they were getting gashed. This is Rutgers we're talking about. They had a receiver, 7 catches for 127. Another receiver, 7 for 109 and a touchdown. Another receiver, 8 for 84 and a touchdown. Another receiver had a 25-yard big play touchdown. It's like, holy cow.
Yep.
I just again, I mean, I made the comment about Cade. He wasn't in bed with anybody. I mean, Rutgers, I mean, Noah Verdar, whatever you want to say his last name was. He had a huge day, 29 of 43, 381, 3 touchdowns. He did have 1 interception, but my goodness, he looked like Tom Brady out there.
Yep. And even with Cade playing exceptionally well, as a team, Michigan was averaging 7.5 yards per pass,
Yeah.
or completion, and Rutgers is averaging 13.1. So, or excuse me, 8.7. But in the receiving, it was 13 yards a catch. But it was man, it was very. I don't know. It irked me a little bit, but they got the W. So again, before even knowing about what happened in the Penn State game, I was able to sleep with my eyes closed that night.
Yeah, so I mean, something we've been trying to do for these games. I think we started 2 weeks ago with our last pod, but I want to do it. We talked about doing this. Let's talk about somebody that had a great day. Let's talk about somebody that had a really bad day, and then maybe somebody that just we need to see more from. Let's start with good. I think this one maybe be obvious, but who's your pick of the good day?
I think there's a really pretty playing a day. 3 guys you can choose from. I'm going to go to Cornelius Johnson on this one because they need a solid number 1 receiver to step up. Ronnie Bell is a disappearing act at times, but Cornelius Johnson stepped up this week and scored 2 touchdowns, and it really again sparked the life in this offense.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's between 3 as well. And if I wasn't taking in my opinion, the most deserving, I would either take Cornelius Johnson or Giles Jackson, who has a huge kickoff return. But I'm going to go Cade. I mean, he gets to play a little bit. He gets put back on the bench for Joe. He watches this team go down 17-0, and he gets called upon to come off the bench. And what more can you ask for? I mean, how often in a full game do we see somebody throw 4 touchdowns? It's pretty rare. It's pretty rare at Michigan. It doesn't happen often. I mean, I don't know who the last person to throw 4 was, but I don't know if Shea did it, he probably only did it once. I mean, it's not common, and he does it coming off the bench, and ends up leading Michigan to a win. But for me, let's go ahead and go to just need to see more from him. For me, it's Blake Corum. Not enough. I mean, in this game, he goes 4 carries for 9 yards, and then he gets 1 catch for 11 yards. I don't know about you. I feel like he's in there a lot, like a ton.
Yeah.
And he just hasn't had that big game yet. They've used him in short yardage for off tackle runs, and he's scored a few times. So I mean, I know a lot of people will be like, "Well, he's got some touchdowns in the year," but I mean, what impact play does he have?
Mm-hmm.
Truly, I mean, the first play of the season, we run a swing route to him, and I'm like, oh wow,
right.
Okay, what are we expecting this year? And we just haven't seen. I don't know. Maybe it's how he's utilized. Maybe it's because this running back room is extremely crowded. I mean, in this game alone, Hassan gets 23 carries, Zach gets 6, Roman Wilson takes a carry, Blake Corum takes 4, and then Chris Evans takes a carry. But like, I don't know. For as much as he's in there, I need to see more.
No, I absolutely agree.
Is there somebody that sticks out to you as somebody that you need to see more from?
Again, it's between a few guys, and I'm going to go to the defensive line. We're towards the bitter half of this year, so you only got 2 more games to show it. But I'm going to have to go. I'm going to have to just pick one here. I'm going to go with Donovan Jeter.
Yeah,
and a little bit of Carlo Kemp. Those are our senior leaders on the D line, and again, even though that they on the stat line here they held Rutgers to probably the lowest rushing yardage the whole season. If I had to guess, 105. I mean, Minnesota probably ran for more, maybe not, but that's probably our second best on the whole season. They just no one on that D line is just making any plays when it matters. I think right after Michigan scored with Cade, they got a sack that was pretty huge, but just very inconsistent, and I'm just gonna have to go with between those two.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the defensive line has probably been one of the. It hasn't been talked about enough because obviously the secondary's been really bad, the offensive line's been bad, quarterback play's been bad, but truly the defensive line's been pretty bad too. I mean, lack of pressure, giving up big long runs, lots of things. Let's talk about the ugly. Somebody that just had a straight up bad day that you feel like we need to call out.
I think it's going to have to go to Quinn Nordine. 0 for 3 on the field goals. The dude, if I'm not mistaken, was literally the recruit that had Netflix and chill with Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah.
And one of the highest rated kickers out of high school. And as a Michigan fan, and if you're an avid Big Ten football watcher or just a fan in general of the game, you know that he has been in and out with Jake Moody over the last couple seasons because of the inconsistency. Moody's normally in there for under the 40-yarder because he's more accurate. Nordine has a bigger leg, but he's literally a hit or miss. But man, I mean, I think he's a senior now. Dude, 0 for 3. Come on, man. That's 9 points right there that could have made in the long run, avoided you from overtime, or would have ended the game quicker.
Yeah, it's really a sad conversation that we're still having this about Quinn Nordine, honestly. For me, and this is hopefully the last time I say it, it's Joe Milton. You lost your job at this point. He was abysmal in this game. truly, this is like the game that like he should have came out and solidified that this is his job. I mean, it's Rutgers. What other game are you gonna have? I mean, obviously his game against Minnesota was pretty good, and we were buzzing about him. But like, this should have been Minnesota times 2. I mean, you should have put up 300 passing yards and a 70-ish yard rushing day. I mean, this should have been like the absolute come out party where everyone's like, oh well, this is what Harbaugh's seeing. Instead, 4 carries for negative 16. They were probably mostly sacks. His longest carry was 2 yards, so I'm guessing there was 1 carry in there, but the other ones were sacks. And then he goes 5 of 12 for 89 yards. I mean, he struggles to literally complete passes. Now, mind you, there's a couple here that are tipped up and dropped, and I'm not just gonna beat him up, but it's ugly because it's ugly, and therefore you lost your job to Cade. I mean, so between Joe Milton and Quinn Nordine, it just hasn't been good for for these guys that we just had such high hopes for at the beginning of their Michigan careers. We thought at this point they would be staples. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it's pretty disappointing. Anything more to say on the 48-42 Michigan win?
Nothing of huge significance. I will say this real quick before we go on this one. There was a play, I think it was a 2nd and 4, and Cade was in at the time. And the pocket literally exploded on him, and he is running off his back foot, and he zips up all the Nick Eubanks.
I'm glad you brought this play up.
Catches it, and he gets the first down, and he ended up being like an 8-yard play.
Yeah.
I feel like if Joe Milton's in there, that's a huge sack. And I hate to hate on the kid because I really was hoping he was going to be poised to be promised or be a promising player.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And so I just think that play would have been a lot different if number 5's still in there.
So it's been a couple weeks. I believe, was Laurinaitis calling the game? Do you remember who was calling this one?
I believe it. Yes, it was because Golick was doing the Penn State game.
Yes. Okay,
so Laurinaitis was doing this game. Yep.
Laurinaitis was calling this game, and after that play that you just referenced right there, okay, he literally said, I mean, Laurinaitis goes over them. He's like, "That's it right there." He goes, "That's an it play." Sometimes you just have it, and then sometimes you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, that play right there is a great indicator. It's just like, not everybody makes that play, or not everybody's able to make something out of nothing. It's just not for everyone, I guess. Moving right along, we got the Penn State Nittany Lions winless visiting Michigan. They're winless no more. They pick up the W 27-17. They moved to 1-5, dropped Michigan to 2-4. This one hurt. This one hurt bad. Only because, not that I expected us to win, but I didn't expect us to lose because of how bad Penn State's been this year. And they pretty much they did this thing called running it down your throat. I mean, that's what we just talked about a minute ago. And to be fair, Michigan runs it down Penn State's throat. But I mean, there's some big factors here. Let's go ahead in the first one. Cade McNamara gets his first start. He gets hurt somewhere in the first quarter or second quarter, somewhere in there. Ends up getting injured. Joe Milton comes back in. Not very effective. 2 carries for 8 yards. 1 of 3 for 21 yards passing. Nothing really happens while he's in there, and it's pretty much a dry spell. And then Cade's able to come back in, but it's just not enough. Give me some thoughts on this one.
Well, was not expecting to get shut down like we did. Penn State's defense has been abysmal all year. They're literally giving up 30-plus points a game. 36 to Indiana, 38 to Ohio State. Understandable there. 35 to Maryland, 30 to Nebraska, 41 to Iowa. It's just, I don't know. I thought Cade McNamara hopefully he was going to make the next step, or at least translate or get that momentum going from the Rutgers game. He's playing banged up, so they were saying that during the game that the shoulder might have been affecting him a little bit, but nonetheless, their defensive line was getting gashed in this game. 254 they gave up. I don't think you've heard of 254 outside of Ohio State since the Brady Hoke Rich Rod years. I could be wrong, but very very upsetting. Sean Clifford only 163, not horrible, but he made timely plays, and one of his timely plays was like a 30-yard run on the ground. This is why he has 73 yards to be added to a stat column, and it was 29 yards. Yep. So timely plays for Sean Clifford. Ronnie Bell only 4 for 40. He made a couple plays when they needed it, like energized plays, emotional plays, but it wasn't enough. So other than their defense being absolutely sickening, I'll have to read this real quick. I saw this on the internet, and it was in one of the blogs or something like that. One of the beat writers said it. So one of the lone bright spots from this game was Hassan Haskins. Again, last in the Rutgers game, he was more of the featured back. In this one, they did more of that idiotic running back roulette a little bit here. So he rushed for 100 yards for the second straight week. However, Michigan's coaching staff couldn't get out of its own way. Again, after Haskins dominated on the ground, rushing for 65 yards and a touchdown on a drive, Haskins only received one carry on the next 3 Michigan possessions. They all resulted in the same thing, punts. This is absolutely inexcusable by the coaching staff. So, again, Rutgers for some reason was a little bit different. I don't know what they're seeing. Obviously, the coaches were not, but what Jim Harbaugh's son, the running backs coach, is seeing, what's given him the idea that pulling a guy who literally leads you to a rushing touchdown, and then just decide to bench him, or not bench him, but let him cool off, and then do your change of pace backs, which, again, you talked about wanting to see more Blake Corum. That is fine, but I think it's obviously got to be used at the right in the right moment.
Yeah. I mean, this game just doesn't make any sense. I mean, truly, they ran it effective. 27 carries for 174 and 2 touchdowns. I mean, obviously 60 of it came on 1 carry from Hassan Haskins, but I mean, they ran it effective. It's just it sucks that the passing game wasn't there. Obviously, probably a little bit of it's due to injury. And then a little bit of it's just because they just couldn't get it going. And I mean, anybody that had any sort of receiving promise in the weeks prior did nothing in this game. The leading receiver had 40 yards. That's Ronnie Bell. Just there's some fumbles in there. I mean, this was an all around bad game. It just I don't know. It's disheartening. It's disappointing. Nothing more than I can really say about it. I mean, you get gashed for 50 carries, 254, and 3 touchdowns, but the worst of it was just watching Sean Clifford, just like you had not alluded to, just absolutely dominating in the zone quarterback draw game. I mean, it was just like, and I think he had a big run. I think his 29-yard touchdown run came after his injury. He had like a potential knee injury. He was on the sideline for a play or two.
Yep.
And he comes back in like the next drive. He goes for a rushing score. Gosh. I'm with you though. I mean, the play selection, the play calling, especially when you're not sure about your quarterback situation. Feed Haskins. He takes 17 carries in this game. The week before he had 23. I mean, try to get him back over that 20 mark, and clearly it's effective when he's when he's getting the carries, he's carrying the ball for over 5 yards a clip. I mean, oh
Yeah, and when I've seen in the part of the Rutgers game too, I think they need to just take Chris Evans and make him their slot receiver or use him more at the receiver position. He
yeah,
seems to have more effectiveness when he's in space. That's his MO. He's a quick jitterbug. And when they try to run him up the gut, I don't see anything that really works out for him. Again, you got to get your playmakers the ball here. So again, Ronnie Bell earlier 40 for 40 or 40 here, and not huge, not gaudy, but they were timely. They got to get him more of those timely plays. Cornelius Johnson, he lights it up on the scoreboard last week. You only get him the ball twice. Nick Eubanks lights up on the scoreboard last week. He gets 1 for 6 here. You got to make the big games matter too. You can't just be the stat stuffers against the poorest defense. And who's to say Penn State again? They've given up the 27, or excuse me, the 17 points to Michigan is literally the lowest they've had all year. It's been 35 or more, really. And the one thing too that Penn State really dominated on their offensive side was, again, like you mentioned, the zone read, the off tackle stuff, where the lineman has to make the decision to get the running back or cover the quarterback. They were getting eaten up on that all day long. Mike Golick, I think, made a comment about it, and once that comment was made, once it was brought to light, it was just like play after play after play, and Sean Clifford 163 only, but didn't have to do that when you're getting 5 yards of carry. Why would you have to do anything else?
yeah.
And if you go to the highlights of that game, every score that Penn State's got is a running back untouched.
Yeah, they dominated time of possession, 36 minutes to 23 minutes. The rushing 254 to 174. So even though Michigan had a big rushing day, I mean, Penn State's was far and away better. And even though Penn State had a terrible passing day at 163, it was better than Michigan's at 112. It's just like Michigan can't keep the chains moving. They're 4 of 12 on third down. Goodness gracious. It's just a lot. Penn State 25 first downs. They're just absolutely gashing Michigan. That's the best way to describe it. I mean, no run defense at all. No defense to really speak of. The pass defense was, I guess you could say, somewhat acceptable, only for the fact that Penn State didn't really want to pose that as a threat. So
no, and maybe it's slipping me, but is Ben Mason hurt?
no, Ben Mason plays in this game.
Okay, I've literally hardly heard of him in the last 2 weeks. Have you?
Yeah. No, he played in this game, but
Okay.
yeah, nothing of. I mean, he's not utilized.
So much for the big, the gritty guy who talks smack on the field. I have not seen him. I mean, he's a veteran on this team. Where's his senior leadership? I've been preaching leadership because this team, this chemistry, their body language. When one thing goes wrong, it's a snowball effect. When they score or when they have a big play, they start moving their heads. They're jawing. They're getting back into it. This team if they get beat on a third and long or an emotional down play, it's bad news bears, man. They cannot get out of their own way, and I don't know, who knows what's going on in that locker room, but they got 2 weeks left to show some pride because you're not playing for Indy now, and
Yeah.
Maryland's 2-2 at the moment because of their COVID issues in previous weeks. But Tagovailoa's brother, they're nothing to sneeze at, so they better get their heads on a swivel. I know no Michigan. I mean, everyone's playing banged up. I mean, it's no excuse. Everyone's playing banged up, so better bring it.
So before we get into the coming weeks, let's talk about the good. Who'd you see this week that stuck out as a good takeaway from the Penn State game? There's not a lot, but
you know what? I have to I'm gonna have to go. Let's see, an easy one. I just have to go Haskins here. I don't think I choose him. I chose him in the last one.
You
I
did
have to go
not.
Haskins here. Okay, I have to go with Haskins here because when he has called the answers
Yeah.
and 2 touchdowns, 101 on the ground. Of course, that long run there, the 59-yarder. But you know what? He makes most of it.
Yeah, I'm actually with you. If I had to pick somebody else, you're twisting my hand to kind of give you another one. Only because we downed him for last week. Jake Moody comes in and kicks goes 1-1 for field goals and 2 for 2 of extra points. Coming in for Quinn Nordine. Obviously not a lot of chances there to really talk about, but Hassan Haskins, he's been my dude all year. I've been preaching it all year. He gets back-to-back 100-yard games, and he's had multiple runs of over 40 yards this year. I think it's his third or fourth in this game. Somebody that I think that Michigan should feed the ball to. I mean, he's clearly everybody understands this. Even Harbaugh's getting it now that he's the best running back on the team. I don't know why it took so long. But now we need to make sure we're feeding him, especially in a game in which Cade goes 12 of 25 because he's clearly has some sort of shoulder injury from the first half. So, what about something you've seen that seemed promising, not quite there yet, something we need to build on?
Promising, I just have to say, is Eric All. I don't know what it is with. Maybe it's a spiral that's coming out of Cade McNamara's hand, but Eric All has kind of turned it around the last few weeks.
Yep.
No real disastrous drops, no tip balls that lead to interceptions. I think Eric All, even though in this game he's only 1 for 8, Rutgers, he had a few passes that he hauled in. So I think Eric All is showing the flashes of being the greatest school tight end or the greatest tight end in school history, like they preached in the Minnesota game. So hopefully it's good signs for in the future.
Yeah, that's a solid one. For me in this game, it was Chris Evans. Doesn't do a whole lot, but it's his best game yet. Period. He gets 5 touches and averages over 8 yards a touch. I mean, for a running back, that's pretty solid. I'll take that all day. It's not something that I want to see a ton of. I don't want to see a ton of Chris Evans. I want to see more of Haskins. But in the scat back role of something I've asked of Blake Corum, if they're going to use Chris Evans in that role, I'll take 8 yards a clip. So especially on 5 touches, and Blake himself takes 3 touches in this game, I believe. Yeah, just 3 touches, and he goes 9 yards a clip. So I'll take it. Like to see more of it. I would have loved to see at least, if they complete one long ball in this game, they have a chance to probably make it 24-27. And at that point, it's maybe a ball game. But it just never seemed close. It just seemed like it was always far out of the way. And so, yeah. And then what about the ugly this week?
The ugly is I'm going to go to the coaching staff. I'm going to on Jim Harbaugh. This team just, again, very hit or miss on when they feel energized. Jim Harbaugh, man, he's a fiery, competitive guy. A lot of guys have been saying, or a lot of people have been saying that he's lost his sizzle here over the last few seasons because of, people telling him, whoever's telling him to simmer down and not be so boisterous. But we got to get the that pizzazz back. I thought, like the music videos, the corny music videos, no matter how awful they are, that Jim Harbaugh needs to make his appearance again. He died somewhere. You and I both know it was probably after
in Columbus.
The 26. That is probably where his corpse is laying on the sideline. But you know what? If he leaves, if he stays, whatever, it would not make the season, but it would sure give you tremendous momentum in the offseason if something great can happen on December 12th.
So you beat me to it. I am 99% positive. I don't have the stat in front of me. This was the first Michigan loss under Jim Harbaugh that wasn't to Ohio State or or Michigan State at home. He's been here. This is year 6, right? Year 5.
Yeah.
This was his first loss at home to not Ohio State or Michigan State. And it's to a winless team. I know it's Penn State, and before the season, I actually picked Penn State to beat Michigan on our preview. I think you definitely called it a swing game. I don't remember if you called it a win or not, but you can't lose this game. We've said it all year. You just can't lose this game, and we continue to lose. We're at 4 losses now. Let's go ahead and while we're talking about it, let's look ahead to next week at Maryland. And then the week after that's going to be Ohio State. So there's 2 games left. And then obviously the week of the Big Ten Championship, everybody's slated to have an extra game. At this point, let's just talk about Maryland. First, do you think that game happens? Rumor has it that Michigan is talking about shutting down because they've had a positive COVID test.
It's hard to say. I mean, I don't know why. I mean, I don't want to sound too harsh, but I mean, people, NFL, college, everyone has positive results from time to time. So I think if you can do it safely and it doesn't hamper too many people, or it doesn't hamper it doesn't get out of control. If you think it's going to be, I think it should happen. I mean, it's hard to say if the officials will call it or not, but as of right now, I don't see why it couldn't happen. I mean, we've seen worse, and games happen. I mean, it took the Wisconsin game to get canceled in the second week because 20-something of their players had it, and it took till I think the 12th player to actually make it news. So, who knows?
Okay. So if the game's played, obviously you mentioned Tua's younger brother's been balling out for them. This one's at Michigan, 3:30 on Saturday. What's your initial prediction?
A loss.
I agree.
I just don't see anything that can tell me otherwise. Maryland's defense is atrocious. So the best outcome for Michigan is to play like they did against Rutgers, just throw triple overtime, something like that. I mean, because they're giving up 442 yards a game in total. And I mean, Tagovailoa, he turns the ball over. He's 7 touchdowns, 7 picks right now. So I would pick Michigan if they had a defensive line and they could create some sort of pressure. But if they can't generate any pressure, he's gonna just sit in the pocket all day and pick them apart. They're I don't know. It could get ugly. It could be completely wrong. So far, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I feel like I've been pretty spot on, or at least close to my gut feeling. And my gut feeling is this is going to be at least a 14-point loss.
Yeah, I mean, Sean Clifford had his way with Michigan. I don't think Sean Clifford's that good.
He's not an aerial assault guy. I don't even know who to compare him to, but if he was on Wisconsin, he would probably fit the mold. I mean, he is a little bit more mobile than a Wisconsin type quarterback. That's why he did it a little on the ground with his legs, but
yeah,
he has a ceiling on his passing. He's not asked to do a lot. And when he can run the ball, yeah. Anyways, go ahead.
I mean, no, that's basically what I was alluding to. And to his brother, he had a game just a couple weeks back before COVID all affected their team. I mean, he lit them up for like 300 yards and like 80 rushing yards. I mean, dude can play. Dude can flat out play. So Michigan's in trouble. Michigan's in big trouble. And if this is a lingering issue with his shoulder that he can't, I mean, Michigan's in a big hole, especially if they don't feel like they want to run the ball. So
yeah, and it also depends on the game is on. Cade McNamara at quarterback. There's a shot that this again is a barn burner, tit for tat all the way to the very end. The over under right now is 58. So Vegas is just daring you to take it. And if Joe Milton's in there, and I mean if he's going to get down 17-0 to Rutgers, Not looking pretty, man.
Yeah. Nope, I agree. Well, let's go ahead and get into Ohio State a little bit. Ohio State cancels their game. Ryan Day has test positive for COVID. They cancel their game against Illinois. As of right now, they have to play their next two games at Michigan State and home against Michigan in order to qualify for the Big Ten championship, even though they're undefeated, winning their the East right now. What's your take? You think they first of all, do you think they're going to play both those games?
Getting hard to say. I think they will. And they're very winnable for Ohio State. It seems like this season, and Ohio State fans can agree with me on this, is their secondary, even though they have a lot of talent, Sean Wade, all those guys, they're kind of vulnerable on the back end. And you can look at and watch their games, and Indiana kind of exposed them there probably the most. But I think they should play those games. I think they will play those games.
Yeah. Michigan State. Is there any chance Michigan State pulls up another upset after knocking off Northwestern last week? Any chance?
No, not a chance. I love Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern. And I know they were ranking was probably their best in school history or for a long time. But, I mean, did we really think Northwestern was that good? No. And Northwestern is, as a program level, like here, Michigan is right here. Michigan gets blown out by Ohio State. So Northwestern would, I think Michigan State is going to get creamed here if the game's on.
Okay, let's go ahead and move into, before we get into Final Four talk, if Ohio State somehow does not play in the Big Ten championship and they only play 0 or 1 more game, okay, so they either end 4-0 or 5-0, is that enough for you to put them in the college football playoffs?
Well, you got to ask yourself this. Are they one of the top 4 teams in the country?
For me, it's a yes.
Okay. Then, yeah. Because...
So let me ask you this. That's a great question.
Yeah.
Before the season, were they a top 4 team?
Absolutely.
So why play the season? Why play it out?
I know.
Why play it out? Because it's college football, and any given Saturday, something
Absolutely.
could potentially happen.
Could, yeah.
But I'll also say this, and I'll back Ohio State a little bit. You know me, I freaking hate them. If Ohio State had a loss to Michigan State or Michigan or in the Big Ten championship game, I still think they're a top 4 team.
Yeah. But the thing is, obviously, you got to look at who's 5 and 6, right? So if you lose a game, see, this is where it gets very interesting with the committee, because their job is to pick the top 4 teams. And there's been years where a team with 1 or 2 losses is on the bubble because, sure, they slipped up, but you give them a little leniency with them. And
yeah,
with Ohio State, with how bad Michigan and Michigan State are playing right now, and how just a crapshoot their year has been, if Ohio State loses to one of those teams, I think they should be out. Maybe that's contradicting what I'm saying about saying that they're in preseason if they finish 5-0, 4-0, whatever. But you gotta have to respect what Cincinnati's doing. You gotta respect what Florida and Texas A&M are doing. And so if Ohio State somehow loses one of those games, which they probably won't, you have to look to a team that's undefeated, like Cincinnati is still, or a team who's played more of a schedule.
Let's talk a little bit about our top 4 teams. First off, let's just go in order. Who do you have at 1?
Bama.
I did have Bama.
You got no reason to take them out.
Only because I think Notre Dame has played the best football. They have the best win. Okay? They potentially have the second best win. As far as if you're ranking, your second win, who's that? I mean, beating North Carolina, they've beaten Clemson. I'm forgetting somebody. think they have 3 ranked wins already this year. I mean, Notre Dame has been shockingly good this year. I mean, I think everybody understands that Notre Dame over the last several years has had those things where they go undefeated and then all of a sudden they lose one late and they, or they get into the playoffs and they get destroyed. But this Notre Dame team just seems different. They're physical. They control both sides of the line of scrimmage. Ian Book, I mean, he's playing great football. So if they're not 1, they're 2. Who do you have 2? Notre Dame?
Yeah, Notre Dame.
Okay. Who's 3?
Clemson.
Clemson over Ohio State?
Yeah.
With a loss right now?
Yeah.
I'd take Ohio State at 3, but then Clemson 4, only because of the loss. But let me say this. In a couple of weeks, Clemson's going to play Notre Dame. Matter of fact, it might even be... No, I think it's in a couple of weeks. I think they have the week off or whatever. Or they're on the road this week, and then next week they're in their championship game, right?
Yeah.
Regardless, they're going to play Notre Dame here in a couple of weeks on a neutral field, and I think they're going to beat them. And at that point,
I think so. I mean, not having Trevor Lawrence was huge, obviously.
Yeah. And then I'm going to put them probably at 3. Move Ohio State to 2. Drop Notre Dame to 4. Because I believe Clemson and Notre Dame both deserve to be in. And at that point, you can have a Clemson-Ohio State rematch. And then Alabama and Notre Dame. I don't see A&M getting in. I don't think there's much they can do. They don't get to play Bama again. They got slaughtered by Bama. Okay, so I mean, their loss is questionably the best loss in the country outside of maybe Clemson, who's lost to Notre Dame. But they got slaughtered, where Clemson went on the road and they lost by 3 in overtime. I mean, I leave A&M out. Cincinnati, we've learned any great Power 5 school with 1 loss is going to get in over those teams. They would need Notre Dame or Clemson to lose again. Are you somewhat in agreement to that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I believe that Cincinnati has a program. I don't know, maybe it's debatable. I think they're a program that's better than UCF by a little bit. So I think it's enough to give them to sneeze a little bit. So again, probably not going to get in by any means, but if any of the team outside the top 4 right now gets in, it's probably going to be Florida or I don't know. But again, with Notre Dame, is the history of Brian Kelly is losing the big one. He's like Bob Stoops. He's going to get you to the promised land, and then he's going to let you hang dry. So either the Notre Dame meltdown happens when they play Clemson again in the championship, or they Brian Kelly gets over that hill, and then they face whoever, probably Bama or whatever, or someone's going to be in there that's going to compete with them. But you're just that blowout loss is just hanging over like a rainy cloud. If this is going to happen, it's going to happen soon. If it's not, kudos to Brian Kelly. I think the dude's a complete douche, but the dude can get his team at least in the mentionables.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's doing something that Harbaugh can't do, and that's, taking his team to the next level. And it seems like they're clicking. They're getting recruits. They're putting kids in the NFL, and they're putting solid kids in the NFL. So, well, what else did we have? Is that it? Is that a wrap?
I think so. I mean, kind of we beat the dead horse about Harbaugh the last few episodes because of the coaching search, whatever. So a couple more weeks, we'll actually have probably some new juicy rumors to get to. I would like to say, though, real quick, is the new one that's been thrown around the webs right now is Urban Meyer to the Texas Longhorns.
So there's always been 2 teams that I thought would land Urban. Michigan was never one, and I'll put that on record. He ain't coming to Michigan. We've said this too many times in the pod, but there are still idiots out there that are calling for this. I've always thought 2 jobs. USC, and if Brian Kelly were to leave Notre Dame.
Yeah.
But with that being said, there are 2 additional jobs that I think he could also take and make elite today. Texas and Florida State. And if he were to go to Texas, that's massive. That's massive.
Yeah, Texas is see, the thing is about Urban Meyer is he's a winning coach wherever he goes. He's honestly probably one of the best coaches of all time, at least top 5, probably top 4 in my opinion.
Yeah.
The problem with Urban Meyer is when it's usually if the going gets tough or there's some off the field issues, he leaves town. He even left town in Ohio State. I thought when he first got hired into Columbus, I thought, this dude's going to be in here for a few years. He's going to create some violations, and it's going to end like Florida did. But it didn't. He kept winning and winning, but he had off the field whatever. And so halfway through his tenure, I'm like, man, this dude is never going to leave. If you are a USC or Texas, I would want Urban Meyer there until he's dead. I don't want him to be here for 5 years and then boot. I want you to be here I want to give you a lifetime contract, John Gruden style, 10 years, 10 million, 100 million, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Just, I want you here, man. And Texas is a very difficult place to go. I thought Tom Herman out of the Buckeye coaching tree was going to be the next Urban Meyer.
I did too.
And Texas is really difficult though because you got a million schools down there and some of the best talent comes from that state. But I think USC would be a really good spot for him. If he goes to Florida State, there could be a potential where he could like recreate the 1990s, early 2000s Miami Hurricanes down there. I think he could be he loves getting those kids that are very controversial, the guys that have really terrible grades, don't really have a good home life. He's like, Jimmy Johnson did the same thing with the Hurricanes back then too. You get the guys that are sleeping on couches to stars in the NFL, and obviously that comes with extra baggage. We've seen it everywhere he's gone. So, I've said enough, man. Urban Meyer, who knows?
Yeah, Urban Meyer to Texas would be a home run hit. And hell, that might be huge for some teams that are trying to get Lincoln Riley. Because if Lincoln Riley all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, I got competition, he might pack bags and leave. Maybe he might come to Michigan. Who knows? That's definitely not a name that I've heard thrown out for the Michigan job, shockingly.
No, and Lincoln Riley, I was kind of skeptical because he takes over a program again that was in relatively great hands, and I thought maybe he was going to be riding the coattails, kind of like how a lot of people say Les Miles did when Nick Saban left LSU, and then he'd kind of fizzle out because the talent pool was dwindling down. But he's kept the program in somewhat good shape. So
yeah, he's a couple of number 1 picks, couple of Heisman Trophy winners.
Yeah, but if he does leave, a Big Ten or an ACC could be a next landing spot. But Lincoln Riley, I don't think he's going to be. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a wrap. I think we pretty much talked about everything we could. We're a couple weeks away from Michigan, Ohio State. We're excited to talk about that. I'm not excited to watch it, but I'm excited to talk about it. And we'll see what this week brings us, and we'll go from there. Try to get back to 500.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Have a good one. See you next time, and go Blue.
Peace.